Can everybody hear? I mean, is the voice carrying to the back? Well,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. What I want to do is to just simply reflect on the question, does environmental leadership foster green growth or limit economic development? One of the questions that's raised in this session. I think the coin with which we judge economic progress or regress that we economists have inflicted on the rest of the world is dead wrong. We economists actually practice economics very badly. GDP is the coin with which we judge success, and it was never intended to be that, and it isn't that. It isn't that for two reasons. First of all, GDP is a flow, so many dollars per year, and you can never judge future possibilities by looking at flows. You need to look at stocks, because it's stocks of assets which harbor in them future possibilities. So naturally, the right thing to do is to look at evaluation of stocks. We should be looking at wealth, inclusive wealth, stocks of capital assets, which includes not just produced capital and human capital, which are usually in the economist's agenda, but also natural capital, which is one of the aspects we are looking at here. Mother Nature's objects out there, forests, rivers, coastal assets, and so forth. There's tons of literature now on this, and I have, in my limited way, contributed to trying to bring natural capital in the foreground in adding to it. But in any case, it's inclusive of natural capital, that's point number one, and point number two, that it ought to be the stocks of capital as opposed to flows. And the United Nations Environment Program has actually made considerable progress in trying to estimate the inclusive wealth of nations, that is, inclusive of natural capital. They used to have an annual publication. I think the last publication I saw was in 2022 in charting the development of natural inclusive wealth per capita across countries. We often, in all these meetings that I attend, we are often come up with the problem of where to find resources to shift attention away from the direction that we are moving to the policies that we ought to follow. Namely, if we want to move away from GDP growth, so thinking of development in that form, to inclusive wealth, as to whether wealth is increasing or not, would it not cost something, the world? Well, it will cost two things. First of all, psychological cost, shifting away from what you thought was the thing that really mattered for you to something that really does matter for you. It itself requires education, conviction, to recognize that it is how it is. It is the right way of going about things. And it's the right way of going about things. I think one way of trying to explain it is to think of what a householder regards as improvement in the conditions of the household. It will not be looking at the income flow, but it will be looking at as to whether its total assets are increasing or not. Are we wealthier rather than whether we are richer? For the global economy, and that's where I think an international cooperation is required hugely, and I think we are really missing out on something, so let me try and share some ideas of where I would like to see some serious international cooperation. It has to do with the fact that there's a huge amount of funds that are wasted. And I want to point to one which is really staggering. The annual value of merchandise that is shipped across the open oceans of the world is approximately $10 trillion. Okay? And yet, nobody pays for the privilege of sailing across the seas. That's an asset owned by humanity, if you like. Mm-hmm. That's the right way of putting it. I'm talking about the open seas now. I'm not talking about the coastal plains. Nobody charges for it. And yet, we can collectively charge for the use of the oceans. If you had a piece of grazing land and somebody wants to graze his sheep there, wouldn't you charge a rent? And yet, we don't charge ourselves the right to cross the seas. Now, at $10 trillion a year of merchandise flowing, at 5% we could collect, I mean the human economy, could collect $500 billion a year. Now think of what we could do with that. To come back to sustainability, one immediate expenditure could be to buy off Brazil in not further damaging the rainforests. Brazil and other countries, those countries which house global public goods, but they're within national jurisdictions, they can legitimately say, and they do say, why should we be responsible for maintaining the world? And we need to develop, we need to keep our citizens in good shape. So why we need to be compensated? And yet it was always the compensation problem that crops up and says, where is the money? And yet, as I suggested just now, immediately we can raise about $500 billion if we really put our mind to it on an annual basis, and then use it for sustainability, programs of sustainability. So there are two things that I want to conclude with this. One is that the coin with which we judge sustainable development has been chosen badly. It should not be GDP per capita growth. It should be wealth, inclusive of natural capital. And the other is that sustainable development requires us to think always of paying for what we use. Whoever uses something should feel some pinch, so to speak, because nothing is free. And we think in terms of taxes and subsidies when it comes to distortions created on assets which are going for free. But then there are certain types of distortions which are so hidden that we don't think about them. And I wanted to point to the fact that the oceans, open oceans, are there and we don't charge for it. And I'm not talking only about the environmental implications of traffic along the oceans. I'm talking now about the rents that we ought to collect. And then perhaps part of the rent could be there to protect the environment and buying off countries which are depleting global public goods. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Partha.